Hey everyone, today we're back with the highest form of juicing you could do as a solo player. This is going to be 90-95% of the maximum possible juicing in PoE. The other 5-10% is really reserved for 6-man parties and it's just not very economical for us to do. But if you want the juiciest possible maps, if you want loot everywhere, if you want your game to crash from how much shit there's everywhere, this is the playstyle. What we're going to be doing today is very low maps per hour. We're going to be putting a lot of investment into our maps, but we're also going to get a lot of returns from them. I do want to say before we keep going, this is not for the faint of heart. You're going to need an extreme endgame build to make this work. If your build isn't up for it, you're going to die a lot, and you're going to definitely need all 6 portals to be able to loot all this. You're also going to want to go really fast, as the faster you go, the more money you make. First, let's go over the tree that we're going to use for this strategy. The biggest change from the Tropical Island video is we are going to be using martial forces. This gives our Conqueror maps increased quantity and increased pack size, and that is going to be the thing that we are scaling to make this work. We want to be running a Conqueror map for every single one of these to abuse this, as well as wanting to run Fortune Favors the Brave for shaping the valleys. The rest of the tree is typical of what we would expect for just stacking as many mechanics with as many mobs as possible. We're going to be taking all the Beyond nodes to abuse Beyond. With the amount of mobs everywhere, we're going to get a lot more Beyond portals, which is going to just give us overall more mobs. We are also going to take up all the Alpha nodes that matter. We're picking up this one as we don't really have many points left to spend anywhere else, and we are going to run out of Alpha missions eventually. And once we do that, we are going to lose a bit of profitability over not having Alpha missions. The same goes for artifacts, and the rest of the Alpha nodes are simply just either quantity or pack size, or in the case of time dilation, the best node on the Atlas tree. When this procs in your incursion, every mob will be blue. You'll get so much reward out of it. It's going to be great. The only thing we're picking for Delirium is Delusions of Persecution. We cannot skip out on this. What this does is it makes it so Kosis and Omni will always spawn in our maps, and we also get more splinters from them. This makes them drop anywhere between 25 to 30, and it greatly helps increase the amount of money we make. For the rest of the tree, we're also picking up Harpies. Harpies are amazing for giving us more monsters to spawn more Beyond. We're specifically pathing through the top here to pick up additional Harpies. We don't care about their rewards, we just care about them existing on our map. We're also picking up the Abyss package. This is going to make Abysses almost crash you with how many monsters they spawn. Makes it really fun to do. Underground Kingdom gives us an additional chance to have an Abyss per pack size. We're gonna have a lot of pack size on this, so this usually gives us an extra Abyss. Abyssal Army is what makes Abysses fun, in my opinion. This with a gilded Scarab gives you 150% increased monsters for all of your Abysses, as well as these 2 tiny nodes here for another 30%. This lets the Abysses just spew monsters, which is even more Beyond portals. We're only picking up Flash Breach. There really isn't a good Scarab for us to use, so we're just going to take Breach with Flash Breach. This just makes it so we get monsters and we don't really have to do much or think much about it. For the rest of the tree, we're pathing through every single modifier node. Not only does this increase the modifiers on the map, making it harder, it also increases the quantity and the pack size. And that is all we're looking to scale through this. We're also picking up all the quantity nodes in the middle, as we don't really need anything else. We just want to have as many generic raw stats as possible. One thing you might be able to change up if you want is you can run Conquered Conquerors, or you could choose not to. For me personally, this has given me a decent amount of return. It just depends on how much you want to gamble on Exalted Orbs. I managed to get 3 in 16 maps, but if you don't like to gamble for Exalted Orbs, instead you can maybe pick up the Searing Exarch pack size on the left instead. Lastly, we're picking up Singular Focus. This actually does make us quite a bit of money. If we take Singular Focus and then we favor every single map as a Crimson Temple, we can bulk sell our Crimson Temples for quite a bit of return. If you are also running Cartography Delirium Orbs on your maps, you absolutely need Singular Focus and absolutely need Crimson Temples favored, as this will allow you to sustain most of your Crimson Temple Conqueror maps on your own, as it does affect the Deli Orbs. Let's look into the maps that we're going to be running for the strategy. All of this is going to be based off of Conqueror Crimson Temple maps. The reason we are running these is there is an Atlas node that gives us increased pack size on Conqueror maps, and the whole idea behind all of this is to add as much pack size into every single one of our maps as possible, And then that's going to give us a lot of chances at the good divination cards in Crimson Temple. Also going to spawn a lot of Beyond Demons, which is going to make this compass right here make us a lot of money. The unique monsters drop corrupted items compass. On average, this gives me 12 to 15 6 links per map, which is worth about Exalted, and this very greatly helps to pay for the map costs. All we're really doing with our maps is we are getting Conqueror maps, we're chiseling them, we're alching them, and then we are rolling for Beyond. Every single one of these maps has to have Beyond on it. The more Beyond, the more money we make. So TLDR is pack size, and quantity. That's all we need on these maps. Next up, let's talk about the Scarabs that we're going to use in this. First, we're going to use Gilded Abyss. This gives us 2 more additional abysses, and with the Atlas node that we picked, that gives us more abysses per pack size. We're going to have 5-6 abysses per area, and the Gilded Abyss Scarab, the 50% increased monsters, also applies to natural abyss spawns. This means every time an abyss stops, it's going to spew out so many monsters. You're just going to get a lot of Beyond Demons out of it. It's going to be incredible. Next, we're also going to use Gilded Breach. We're not really supporting Breach here other than Flash Breach, just to get the most use out of the breaches as fast as possible. This is just the single best Scarab that we have for this slot. Alternatives are either Elder or Shaper Scarabs, or maybe even Ambush. But Breach definitely gives you the most out of the slot, albeit it's not very much. Next, we're going to be using Gilded Harbinger. Harbingers are amazing for just spewing out monsters everywhere. The more monsters we get, the more Beyond portals we get, the more Beyond portals we get, the more chances we get at good demons to spawn. These also pretty much pay for themselves. Harbingers always have good loot, and these are not too expensive right now. Lastly, we're going to be running Gilded Divination. This is because we are running on Crimson Temple, and Crimson Temple has absolutely amazing divination cards. We have one for a level 3 Enlighten. We have one for a level 3 Empower. We have one for a Mirror Shard. And obviously, of course, the big one in the room, we have the Mageblood card. Now, don't expect to get a lot of Mageblood cards with this. Before running these 16 maps here, I did 20 maps as a test, and I did get 1 Mageblood card out of it. And my friend ran about 20 as well, and she ended up getting 2 Mageblood cards, but it is a very small sample size. We can't really rely on it. What I can say, though, is the Mirror card shard and the Enlighten and Empower cards drop fairly often. On average, you'll see maybe 1 every 1 to 2 maps, which greatly pays for the Divination Scarab, and obviously this increases our chance for the Mageblood card. Ideally, you want to run all these Scarabs as gilded. The whole point of the strategy is to add as much juice as possible, and we do not want to hold back on any part of this. Polished are fine, but you ideally want gilded, and do not go for winged. They are way too expensive. It is not worth it. Next, let's talk about Sextants. These are very important, and we do not want to skip out on these. They will increase our juicing by quite a bit, and the Sextants pretty much make or break how much money these make. First up, we have the Abyss Compass. So for this, you have 2 options, and this goes for all the compasses. You can either get an elevated one, which has 16 uses, or you can get normal ones. For the Abyss one specifically, I highly recommend getting the elevated one. It's actually cheaper than the normal Abyss Compass. You also get 16 uses on them, so you have to change it out less often. But the important part is the elevated one gives you 2 abysses versus the normal one that gives you 1 abyss. That is an incredible amount of extra juice, and it makes the elevated one substantially better than the normal ones, even if you have to pay more upfront. Next up, we have the Beyond one. Now, I highly recommend you don't get the elevated Beyond one. These are around 2.5 Exalted to 3 Exalted each. And if you look at the cost per map, you are spending around 30 chaos per map with this compass versus a non-elevated one, which is 30 chaos for 4 uses. The only difference between the normal and the elevated one is the chance to spawn Beyond goes from 6% to 8%. While this is an increase in total profits, it is a very small one, and you're just fine using the normal ones. Lastly, we have monsters drop corrupted items, and delirium bars fill 100% faster. These do absolutely nothing as their elevated versions, but if you want a bit more convenience, in terms of not having to buy as many compasses, I would highly recommend you get the elevated, at least elevated delirium bars. This is very cheap. This is actually cheaper than if you were to buy them in 4 use versions. And for the monster drop corrupted items, this is slightly more expensive per. You're spending an extra 1 or 2 chaos, but if you want the convenience, I highly recommend just getting elevated. The only alternatives to all of this is if you are out of alpha missions, you would want to drop the monsters drop corrupted items and use an alpha compass instead. Otherwise, we cannot skip out on the other 3. They are giving us too much of our profit. So you have a few options here on what you can run. Ideally, there's only 3 orbs that you want to use for this. The best ones by far would be skittering. These are 50 chaos each, and they will pretty much make up half the cost of each map, but they give you the greatest return back. If you're looking to make the most money per hour, skitterings are by far the best option. If you don't want to spend 250 chaos per map on delirium orbs, your other 2 options are using fine delirium orbs, which give you about a third of the return that skittering do at around 2.5 chaos each, or you can use cartographer, which give you about half of the value back, but they're around 30 C each. The nice thing about cartographer delirium orbs, if you do want to use those over skittering, is that cartographer orbs will give you a lot of conquer maps when the reward bar fills up, and a lot of the times they will be Crimson Temple, especially if you favor Crimson Temple in every single one of your slots. Not only that, but they will also just give a lot of normal Crimson Temples in general, which we can bulk sell and make quite a bit of money. If you don't want to sit here and buy maps too much, and for us, when we did our initial testing before all of this, we used Carta Orbs quite a bit. They're a very good option as it makes bulk selling very easy. You can also sell the Elder and Shaper maps that they give in bulk on TFT and earn a bit more money. And if you do that, Cardos actually get pretty close to skittering, but skittering are definitely the winner. I wouldn't use anything else other than Cardos, skittering, or fine. Since we are looking to juice as hard as possible, we are simply just wasting our time with other delirium orbs. I highly recommend you bite the bullet and you spend the money on these orbs. They will more than pay for themselves with the amount of juice in this map, especially since we'll be reaching reward level 17, 18, and maybe even 19 on the rare occasions in all of our maps. We are getting more than enough on a return. Next, let's talk about our map device and what we're going to be doing with the map device. We always want to run Fortune Favors the Brave. There is no other option here. We want the quantity and the increased pack size from Shaping the Valleys. We are also always going to be running an influence. I prefer Searing Exarch. Searing Exarch does a bit better with my build. You can run whichever one you like, does not matter too much. You're always going to be putting an alpha mission on your maps. If you run out of alpha missions, then you might want to do something else to get some alpha missions back. You are not running these maps very fast. You're only doing around 2 to 3 maps an hour, so you don't need many. But if you would like to keep farming this without stopping, you would have to get an alpha compass and replace the unique monsters drop corrupted items sextant. Let's talk about graphing settings quickly. These maps are going to generate quite a lot of lag. If you're having problems, I really recommend maybe going through your settings and turning them down. Dynamic resolution, dynamic culling helps a lot. If you're still having problems, maybe try swapping your render, as that might help by using a different render. Let's talk about how these maps are going to play out. I would highly recommend not running face first into a lot of monsters. They're very dangerous, especially if you spawn a lot of beyond bosses at the same time, as well as if you pull too much at the same time, you could generate so much lag that you can freeze up. These maps are very GPU and CPU intensive, and you could die from just not being able to play for a second or two. Go slow. These maps are not intended to be maps that you do 10, 20 of them an hour. I was averaging 2 to 3 maps an hour at most, with the map itself taking anywhere between 15 to 20 minutes, and then looting taking anywhere between 5 to 10. Clear the whole thing first, do all the mechanics, do the boss, do the conquer, and then come back and loot. What I did through these maps is I picked up 6 links just to fit them in my inventory nicely before I picked up anything else. And then idly just picked up any big loot or just anything important as I was clearing the whole thing. I didn't really worry too much about filling my inventory, at least until I finished the map. And then I just went through, picked up a whole inventory, and just repeated the process until everything was looted. Check your filter, make it really strict. There's going to be so much loot in this that you sometimes even struggle with an extremely tight filter to be able to pick up everything. Don't waste your time on small stuff like jewelers or maybe a single fusing. Go for the big stuff. You're going to make a lot more money per hour, not picking up the small currencies. Let's look at the reason why you'd want to run all these maps. The loot. So this is all the loots that we got from 16 maps. Or should I say, this is all the loots that we got from 16 maps. We ended up filling 1 1/4 quad tabs, just full of loot everywhere. And honestly, this is very visually appealing to look at. If we look at excellence, we can see that in 16 maps, we ended up making almost 83 Exalted. I ran all of these across 1.25 days, and I believe it took me 8 to 9 hours to do all 16 maps, which puts this at around like 10, 11 Exalted per hour. If we looked at the loots that we got from all this, we can see that Divines were the most money that we made. We also got 7 Raw Exalted. We got 17 Simulacrums, a lot of Scarabs. We got 2 Hunter Exalted Orbs. We got 1 Crusader Exalted Orb. We also got quite a bit of cards. We got 4 Enlightened cards, and I believe we got 1 7 Years Bad Luck. We also got 1 Dragon's Heart, and this would be the full picture if it wasn't also for the fact that we ended up getting 2 Apothecary cards. If we were to count the Apothecary cards, that means in 16 maps, we ended up making 170 Exalted. This is absolutely crazy. If we look at the data that me and my friend have collected over the past few days, between us, we have ran a total of 80 maps with the same build in the same exact way. And between us, we have seen 5 Apothecary cards. This would put Apothecary somewhere around 1 every 10 to 15 maps, but results may vary. Either way, if we were simply doing this for the sake of making money, this is incredibly good. And on top of that, we are pretty often, maybe once a day, maybe once every day and a half, getting a really nice payout in the form of an Apothecary card on top of everything else. This is some of the most fun I've ever had in PoE, and the loots that I've gotten for it was also amazing. It's so fun seeing loot spray everywhere. It's so fun seeing so much loots that even with my filter being super strict, I'm sometimes getting lag just looking at everything. There are so many mobs. There's just consistent fighting. There's consistent explosions everywhere. I have not had more fun in PoE with mapping. This is by far the greatest juicing I've ever done. Crimson Temple's insane. I would highly suggest go run the map for yourself and see the results for yourself. You will not be disappointed. That's all for me today, though. This is incredible. I hope you appreciate it. I hope you try this for yourself. If you have any questions, please feel free to come by my stream. I am live almost every single day, or feel free to write something in the comments below. I will be more than happy to help you or answer any other questions you have from all this. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I appreciate you coming by. Feel free to subscribe if you enjoy this content, and I will see you next time.